So I'm, as I said, taken by this idea that revelation is this somatic experience at Mount Sinai, revelation. Are there enough sheets? Or at least I want to make sure that RA has a sheet, because I think it would be called an Easter egg, but that is neither my religion nor a cultural reference, I'm so sure, but there's something hidden in here just for him. So I'm looking for it so he could find it. There it is, which is that one of the two sources that I brought was written by his college roommate. So I thought that was a special gift for him. But I love this idea that revelation is something, it uses sights and sounds, and we hear it and we experience it and we feel it. And one of the psukim said was clear that God speaks from the cloud because that's where God is, not that God is the cloud, but that somehow, right, and it kind of blends all these together. So both of the rabbis that I brought, I was at the seminary with. So Lauren Birkin is now with the Shalom Hartman Institute and is doing amazing work there. Of course, our scholar in residence last year was from the Hartman Institute, Masua Sagiv, and this upcoming year, put it on your calendar, February 5th and 6th, 2027. Oh, you're doing your hair that day? No. February 5th and 6th, 2027. It was also from the Hartman Institute, Yehuda Kurtzer, who's the president or co-president of Shalom Hartman, will be here as well. So, and Lauren has been working with them for a long time. And Adam Kligfeld is a rabbi at a synagogue out in Los Angeles. So first, let's look at what Lauren wrote. At the time, she was working at JTS back in 2002. That was the year I was ordained, and she was just a year or two ahead of me at the seminary. So I'll read it just so people at home can be with us as well. Was the revelation at Sinai an auditory or visual experience? Hey. See, and this is why if you're at home, you don't get all the smart aleck remarks of the room. According to the book of Deuteronomy, the answer is quite clear. You, quote, "You came forward and stood at the foot of the mountain. The mountain was ablaze with flames to the very skies, dark with densest clouds. The Lord spoke to you out of the fire. You heard the sounds of words, but perceived no shape, nothing but a voice." From Deuteronomy. The purely auditory nature of revelation was, according to Moses, a purposeful pedagogical choice. Since you saw no shape when the Lord your God spoke to you at Horeb out of the fire, be careful not to act wickedly and make for yourself a sculpted image, also from Deuteronomy. The emphasis at Sinai on hearing rather than seeing provided spiritual training to combat idolatry. Right? So if you heard something, that wasn't from a shape. If you saw something, you might be inclined to want to create something that you saw. So Chancellor Ismar Shorish, who was our chancellor when we were at JTS, has written eloquently about this aspect of revelation. Quote, "For Judaism, then, God is a felt presence rather than a visible form, a voice rather than a vision. Revelation tends to be an auditory and not a visual experience. The grandeur of God, Shorish says, is rarely comprised by the hunger to see. However, despite this important theological insight, the climax of the Sinai narrative in our Torah portion is startlingly visual." Right? I mean, that's why the movie's so good, because you can see it all happening. So you said jokingly, yes, auditory or visual. It is both of those things. So before we get to the next test, what's helpful about that? Or what works for you? Or maybe just none of it works for you. But do you prefer the hearing aspect of revelation or the seeing and awe aspect of it? Yeah, Matt. Right. I love that. It talks about people seeing the sound, which I think is beautiful. Right. I think I mentioned this the other day that I think it was as I understand more about how people with autism walk through the world, or people that are gifted musically, or artists see colors, or like they hear, like the wires are connected differently, and it's amazing, right? So I think there are people that see sound or hear colors or things like that. So it is confusing, but I think that it's a neat. It opens up other ways that, yeah.
To the extent that
Shorish, yeah.
is focusing on the auditory, they bring it back to the visual, right? So even the auditory is visual.
Okay.
It's not the sound.
Yeah. Well, it's both. There's many things. Great. Thank you. Yeah, David, and then we'll come to the middle.
For the metaphorists among us, it's neither. It doesn't matter if it's a story that we can incorporate into ourselves, but it doesn't really matter whether it was seen or whether it was heard or whether it's a story or whether it's real. It's what you make of it.
So David's saying that it doesn't actually matter. Don't spend too much ink or time trying to figure out exactly how did it occur, because it doesn't matter if it was visual or if it was auditory or a combination of both, because it's whatever you take from the story, right? Gilman would say it's our myth, it's our narrative, and whatever speaks to you, again, using that phrase, whatever speaks to you is what speaks to you, and that's a good thing. There's deeper lessons than just the straight up story. So great. Okay, middle section. I think 1, 2, 3.
A couple things. What could the Israelites see because of the clouds? But the thing that strikes me is the Lord spoke to you out of the fire, which is unusual.
Well, so we've seen God spoke out of the fire, and also just God spoke out of the cloud as well in today's Parsha. Exactly. So God was not the fire, was not the cloud, but somehow that, I think it's a conceit to people, because we need something. Like if we just heard, somehow it's less kooky to say, oh, it came out of the fire or the cloud than I just heard a voice. That seems like, that's not believable. But coming out of a cloud, that's believable. Jerry, and then Todd.
All senses are valuable, and seeing and hearing are special senses in that they're bringing information from a distance without physical contact. But seeing is still limited in that it's in front of you, whereas hearing is all-encompassing. It comes from all directions, so it's arguably a much greater sense in that.
Oh, okay, neat. Okay, the difference between the limits or expansiveness of sight and the limits and expansiveness of hearing as well. Neat. That's neat. Todd?
So one thing we talked about last night with monsters was like, are these things monsters, or do we make things into monsters based on how we perceive them? And I think something that plays on different senses, it's inclusive, because some people might not have full functioning of particular senses, but it's also like, it's inclusive because it allows the person experiencing it to have a variety of pathways in order to be able to do so.
Yeah, I think it's really neat. And that's actually, we're going to hold on to that idea, because we're going to go in that direction of if you don't have all 5 of your senses, right? You're blind or something else, you're deaf. Where are you in this story of Revelation? And so the story of Revelation having multiple pathways, maybe it has more access points. Okay, I see Aryeh over there, but Michael, Elliot, Aryeh.
Back to the phrase, you saw the thunder.
Yeah.
Okay. Many places in Torah, you saw is used to mean understand. We have exactly the same usage in English. Don't you see? Okay. Look. I'm trying to explain it to you. It has nothing to do with vision.
Yeah.
So even in English, it's the same parallel between seeing and understanding.
Yeah. Great. Seeing and understanding can mean support each other. Yeah. Elliot.
Well, I'm going to repeat partly what
Great. Say it more eloquently, even.
Several meanings. One is pay attention, and the other is understand.
Yeah.
It's all parcel of what we're hearing when we're reading these texts.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea that, again, seeing can be understanding as well. So, right. Wait. Elliot? I mean, Aryeh?
So first you just mentioned that some people can see, but some people can't see, some people can't hear. In the text of what happens there, it's like you sort of like you felt it too. So it's like I'm like even if you couldn't see or you couldn't hear, it shook so that you were accommodating that. But the point I was going to make was you're talking about fire and you're talking about a cloud. We already saw the fire and we already saw the cloud. Now we have, but what we didn't have before was being able to tangibly associate that with that being God. That was there when they were getting out of Egypt, and now, as I'm thinking about it as we're reading this, it's like now you have the fire and the cloud that we already saw, and now you have God coming through them, and that's why you have to hear it. You already saw it, and now that's why it's important.
Yeah, they're not strange things. Obviously, they know what fire is. They know what what clouds are, right? Exactly. So we've seen something and it's used. I remember a couple weeks ago, a bar mitzvah kid talked about how the revelation for Moses had to happen out of something that was unusual enough, but also not grand that it would be scary, right? So a burning bush. It wasn't a burning mountain or something, because we know on the burning mountain, Sinai, everyone gets freaked out and scared and says, Moses, you go do this for us, right? But on the burning bush, the reaction, it was sort of dialed in to the right amount of AWE, of awe, so that Moses would be like, that's curious, right? But I'm not going to run away. I'm not going to put a bucket of water on it or whatever they would do back then to put it out. He was curious about the burning bush. So great. Okay, I want to get to more of the text here, because the next one is really what I think is interesting for us to unpack. So on the Committee of Jewish Laws and Standards, that's what CJLS is, of which Toby sits on that. And so you probably also know Rabbi Klickfeld. And also Rabbi Megdal, I don't know what her status is. Yeah, so she's connected to the Committee of Jewish Laws and Standards as well. So this is from a blog that he posted after one of their discussions, and I thought it's really worth us considering. So I share with you one insight stemming from a tshuva, a legal responsum, we discussed this week at the Committee of Jewish Laws and Standards on the question of cheresh, one who is deaf, and to what extent sign language can, halachically, stand in for speech when creating rituals that permit the non-hearing community to be as fully enfranchised within Jewish life as possible. Right? Again, it's the somatic experience, right? Many around the table got stuck on the matter of Torah reading. Blessings can be recited in any language according to halakha. One may recite the Amidah in English. And so there is no reason a non-hearing person cannot recite blessings using signs. Does that extend to Torah reading itself? Like, is there something different about the Amidah from the actual Torah reading? What is the status of a Torah service in which the congregation is non-hearing, and at which the way that the Torah is read is by means of non-hearing person reading directly from the Torah scroll, but instead of chanting, articulating what she or he reads simultaneously, signs it? I don't think I read that properly. I don't know if it was me or the long sentence, but right. But there's something about the Torah reader. There's something about how we receive the words. Does it have to be in Hebrew? Can it be in English? If it could be in English, can it be in sign language? Right. That's the questions that they were discussing. Initial thoughts? Can you? Yeah, Elliot.
Well, we use a model for this in the Talmudic era when the Torah reading was translated verse by verse into Aramaic.
Right. So a targumam. So a Targumim was someone who apparently sort of stood to the side of the Torah reader and would translate it out. So it would still be read in the Hebrew, but it would be translated kind of line by line, or some say that some say line by line, some say it was section by section, some say word by word, into the language that they spoke, Aramaic at that time. So have you ever been to a synagogue that has done that? I've seen it where people have chanted using Torah trope English, using the Torah trope. And that's like an unexpected experience, but it's one of those experiences that I've had where I'm uncomfortable with it because I just haven't seen it before. Not because there's anything inherently wrong with it. It's just, wow, I've only seen that a few times. And so I always weigh kind of what I feel. And right, exactly. Carol? They recited in French. Okay, that would be the same thing, right? So, because that's what they speak there. Unless you're in different parts of Switzerland, then it would be in German. So, right. So, great. Okay, so many agree that while sign language is or the primary language for the non-hearing community, and I also want to bring in that there is a Jewish community within the Jewish community broadly. There are many who are hearing impaired and use sign, and so the fact that we don't see them here is a problem of us, not of them, right? It's a problem that we don't do enough to expand ourselves to embrace the broader sense of community. It's an interesting thing for us to think about. It's not that people don't exist or that they don't create their own sense of community. And even I recognize my language of us and them is problematic. Many agree that while sign language is the primary language for the non-hearing community, the rendering of the words of the Torah into sign is itself a translation, a targum, and not a direct recitation. Most linguists consider sign language to be a language in and of itself. American Sign Language differs from Hebrew Sign Language, and Hebrew Sign Language is not itself Hebrew. Nor is there any certain way to render biblical Hebrew into sign language completely faithful to the nuance of the original, right? When we read it in English, that's not the Hebrew. It is literally a translation. So, and through a translation, it's an interpretation. So sign language, whether it's Hebrew Sign Language or American Sign Language, it would be also an interpretation. It's not the actual Hebrew itself. Therefore, we would encourage the non-hearing community to experience the Torah in this way, to engage in learning the Torah this way, but we may not be able to claim halakhically that what is taking place is fulfillment of the mitzvah, specifically of Kriyat HaTorah B'tzibor, reading the Torah in public. Right? So there is a place for it, but is it, the question that they're having on the law committee at that time was, does it fulfill someone else's obligation of hearing the Torah being read? What stuck with me, Rabbi Kligfeld says, in this exchange was the idea that quietly informed it. There is sanctity, unique, supreme, perhaps even mystical sanctity to hearing our holy Torah chanted perfectly in the original. Think about it, he says. For many regular shulgoers, Hebrew is not a fully or immediately comprehensible language. This is true for many Torah readers. And so the exercise of reading Torah in our shuls often involves a non-Hebrew speaker chanting Hebrew sounds or syllables to an audience that mostly also does not understand the words. And yet we consider that ritual to be in its pristine state so sacred and unimpeachable that we would consider a rendering of the Hebrew text into a medium that would be comprehensible, English for our community, sign language for the non-hearing community, somehow less than authentic. It's interesting, right? That there's something about and we know this instinctively, we want people to get it right. How do we know that? Because so many times at shuls around the world, when someone stumbles on something, people in the kahal feel that they need to speak up to correct them. let me be clear again, that is not your job. That is these people's job to do that, right? So we're not testing your knowledge about the Torah reading. The people here are here to assist the person to get it right. Yes.
We went to an Orthodox bar mitzvah a few years ago. The rabbi announced the minhag in this congregation is only the gabbai may correct the bar mitzvah.
Right, exactly. So, Leslie, and then the Chazan.
Find the concept that there's something the matter with the translation ridiculous because you could, if that's a concern, you have somebody read it and then those that can hear it and those that can't follow the sign language. I mean, at Gallaudet University of the Deaf, instructions to staff, you speak, you sign, and you just do the whole vanilla, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. Well, no. What he's saying is what.
I understand that he's saying he's talking about more about what you feel when you can hear the Hebrew, and I agree with that, because as someone who doesn't understand the Hebrew, I
Yeah.
enjoy hearing the Hebrew chanted, but the idea that people would say that you can't, that it's not halachic if you don't
Yeah.
have the Hebrew chanted, you can resolve it with artificiality, which I think makes it shows how ridiculous it is to me.
Yeah.
You just have it chanted, and some people will hear it, and some people won't.
Yeah. It's really an interesting question that he's bringing up that I'm bringing forward to us. Chazan, and then Samantha.
So, two things. One is that the funny story that Sue's story reminded me of when I was at the Canners Convention last year, I think. We were reading from, I think it was Bahar, and somebody got a little bit tripped up. Literally the entire Kahal started singing the verse.
Because they were all cantors.
Everybody sang the verse. It was the most hysterical thing I ever heard in my life. Then I was thinking about not people who are so-called, I don't know if hearing impaired is the right way to say it or not, but not them exactly, but I love the fact that he references that it's luckily permissible to say the Amidah in your own language in English, even though if we were all to do that, it would feel very bizarre and uncomfortable. When you're teaching kids in a religious school, especially I'm thinking about when I teach them at a weekday mincha, and I want them to know all of the 19 brachot of the Amidah, there's a very difficult thing to teach kids who both struggle with some Hebrew facility and also this is not relevant to their lives on a daily basis at all. And so my approach with them is to say, at some point in your life, you're going to be in a room or a situation or a time in your life when you're going to wish that you had this information and you could belong to whatever group that is in the room, even if right now it doesn't mean anything, that you're going to belong to the club and not feel like you're on the outside. But when I told them at the end of the year, what was your favorite, what was your least favorite part of the experience, they all said that saying all this text was by far their least favorite part. And I'm sort of now, I wouldn't say the word is struggle, but I'm sort of thinking through, okay, what do I want to do next year where I don't want them to have this sort of totally opaque, disconnected experience from the text, but I still want them to have their liturgy card, you know what I mean, when they go to college and all that. So it's
that you're bringing out that creating personal connection and relevance to the text can only be done in a language they understand.
right.
Whether it's sign or English or French or whatever it is, right? Because you're making meaning. And yet there's another layer of it, which is the club, you're saying, right? Hebrew is the connector. So connector to Jews all around the world. So last summer, we were in Paris, and we went Friday night to services, and Shosh was like, I was lost in both languages, right? Because what we would do in English, they did in French, of course, right? Because they were speaking lingua franca, right? And what they did in Hebrew, they did in Sephardic trope, because it was France. And so she was like, that was sort of fun being lost in two languages, right? So, and I thought it was really fascinating because I could follow along the Hebrew, and and it was curious to me because it was different melodies. So I liked that. So wait, was there someone else? Yeah, there was someone else. Samantha. Oh, who's right behind Seth. And then and then, okay. Seth, And then I want to finish this paragraph, and then Melanie has one also. Yeah, Seth, Melanie, then the back. Okay.
I was just going to say there's something very human about locating authenticity and the holy in the past in a distant language, like the Catholics did Latin until the 60s, Russian Orthodox do Old Church Slavonic, which
Yeah.
no one has spoken for 600 years other than the church. And on the other side of that, I appreciate someone pointed out to me in the Torah blessings this week that we don't say Baruch atah Natan HaTorah, who gave us the Torah. We say Notain. He gives. It is a continuous revelation. I think in the present.
Great, thank you. And wait, Melanie.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think it's important that it's not saying that you can't learn or study or, engage with the Torah in any language. It's just saying the obligation to fulfill the mitzvah of hearing it.
Right.
In the original Hebrew and experiencing it that way. And so there are lots of ways we engage with Torah in many, many languages, but the engaging with it or fulfilling the mitzvah by hearing the Torah chanted perfectly is another way that Judaism brings people together. You can't not just anybody can do this on their own by themselves. You need to come together with someone who can do that part and people who can check them. And that's part of, I think a big part of being Jewish is the community piece, whether, it's Shiva or any of those things, having a minyan, all those pieces is about people coming together and having people who can do that part. And so I just think it's important that this is just about fulfilling that mitzvah. It's not about
Accessing.
You can engage with Torah in any way you need to.
Right. So, right, that you're saying close things, right? That you're saying that this is just talking about a very specific thing, not what you can study, what you can make meaning out of. That you should do in the language that you can access. But there's something about that doing it in Hebrew, doing it correctly in Hebrew, that is part of that club, part of something. And not everyone has to be able to do that. And what Seth was saying is that doing something in a language of antiquity is really powerful. And you brought other examples of other faith traditions that use it on purpose, the old language, and even some who have updated their practices. The Catholic Church, you said, right, used to exclusively do Mass in Latin, and then Vatican II allowed them to finally admit that we did not kill Jesus. I added that part, you didn't say that. And also, but it changed the Mass that you could use Latin or the language of where your parish is. So, and finally, yes.
Yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts to it. But
Great.
To keep it short, one of the things that I noticed maybe just in the translation of Kriyat, but the author keeps mentioning reading the Torah and not hearing the Torah in public. And he brings up fulfillment of the mitzvah of reading the Torah. And I think it could be argued that seeing sign language is more akin to reading than hearing.
Oh, cool. I just want to make sure. So, right, what he's talking about is how do you read the Torah? And you're pointing out that hearing the Torah, but maybe sign is more of like reading than it is hearing. I'll also add to that because we had someone who was davening here for a number of years who was blind, and so I sunk up, so whatever. So I wrote down the pages that she told me in her Siddur, which was a Braille Siddur, to our Siddur, so that when I said we're on page 162, I can also say, or page 82, like that. So trying to figure that out. So Braille is another experience. Can you do that? How can you do it? Things like that.
Yeah.
I cut you off. Yes.
I would also ask, not kind of, I don't think it's mentioned in here, but if there was an ability for some kind of a camera feed to show the text of the Torah in big letters so that people who are deaf could actually read it in real time, would that also maybe fulfill the mitzvah? So that they don't need someone who's translating it into sign language and then giving that to the audience if we as a congregation could directly read the Torah as it's
Yeah.
explained.
Yeah, well, definitely in other congregations that Reformed congregations or other congregations that use the technology more than we do, there's a whole lot of possibilities. We do have a hearing loop. It's underneath the carpet, and it is sort of a cool technology. It is Bluetooth syncs with hearing aids, and that's a neat thing. But you're also saying, if we had screens like they do at the church or at other places, yeah, there's so much more that could happen. Okay, I'm conscious of time. Yeah.
So Maria had mentioned that we're all familiar with the cloud, and I wanted to know if maybe that's why schools have such great websites all the time.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. Well, it's funny. The company that does a lot of shul websites is called Shul Cloud. Yeah. So in the last paragraph here, I raised this point not to question whether our association with Torah in Hebrew ought to persist. I believe it should. I raise it to have us consider what it means for the individual Jew and the community of Jews to pray and, quite literally, hear revelation every week in a foreign language. Religion pushes us beyond the rationale and engages the mystical. Whether we are full-blown Kabbalists who impute to each Hebrew letter unlimited power and import, or Jews looking to taste and touch something of the transcendent, the Hebrew text, the Hebrew word, and the Hebrew chant is our medium. Let that sink in this weekend as you recite the Shema, savoring each syllable, asking yourself why it is more meaningful articulating Shema Yisrael than the English words, Hear, O Israel. Consider it as you listen to the reader bring you into Bamidbar in what is most likely not your natural tongue. Let the Hebrew enter into your soul to a place where we believe only it can reach. So something to think about, right? About how we experience the language and how others experience the language, revelation, and community. Chag Sameach.